Hello guys and welcome to episode 80 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlogs. I'm your host Adam, and today we are diving into the psychological story of Keeper, the new game from Double Fine. And when Double Fine was bought by Microsoft back in 2019, the gaming industry gasped. Double Fine was the indie dev of indie devs, working on whatever games studio head Tim Schafer felt like, and finding success in standing out by being creative and artistic. So then, how would the company fare under the corporation of corporations, Microsoft? In the amazing documentary called Psycho Odyssey about the development of Psychonauts 2, you can see how the buyout affected the studio and how even some people left, but how it also helped the release of Psychonauts 2. 4 years after the release of that game, Double Fine are back with their first game release under their new regime called Keeper. At first glance, the game looks as Double Fine as ever, but if we scratch the surface, will Double Fine's creativity have been hindered, and is Keeper a game you need to play for your Game of the Year list? Let's find out in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. But as always, before we get into the episode, I would like to remind you that this podcast is supported by Patreon, so if you do enjoy or have been enjoying the episodes recently, please do head over to patreon.com/beatyourbacklog and support at the $2 or $5 tier there. If you do, you get all of my content 24 hours before everyone else, and you get access to an exclusive podcast series called Beat Your Bonus, where there are kind of evergreen topics of podcasts in there, which you can listen to at any point and at any time when you become a Patreon. So I highly suggest you go over there. So yeah, before I get into the story, I do want to talk a bit more about Psycho Odyssey, actually. Psycho Odyssey is, if you have any interest in like how a game is made and how sort of developers make decisions from, I don't know, the business side or the story side or the game design perspective or the art perspective or animation, pretty much any pipeline of how a game is made. If you have any interest in that, do go over to Double Fine's YouTube channel and check out that documentary. It is unbelievable. It's got about 52 episodes in it. It's like mega long. It goes through the entire process of them finishing off the Psychonauts VR game they made before Psychonauts 2. It goes through all of that, the history of like the Kickstarter that they did, them trying to find a publisher for the game, them getting bought by Microsoft, them switching directors on the game, and then getting it through to the end and pushing it out, and kind of, yeah, it's a fascinating like sort of deep dive and look into how games are made, especially from a small studio, or small as it was back then. I'm not sure how big Double Fine is now, but you know, from a smaller indie studio. So definitely recommend going over to Double Fine's channel and watching that. But yeah, getting onto the story, and the story of Keeper starts off with a flock of strange looking birds flying away from a dark cloud. One of the birds ends up breaking off the flock and sort of avoiding the cloud by landing on a very derelict looking lighthouse. And for some reason, that lighthouse comes to life and grows crab-like legs made out of rebar and concrete once the bird lands on it. You play as this lighthouse, shining your light on the cloud to make it disappear, and start your wobbly journey to the top of a nearby mountain with your new bird companion called Twig. As you progress through the world that looks like a mix of Tim Burton's Gothic style and Hayao Miyazaki's quirky fantasy creatures and characters, you learn that the Black Cloud was in fact the Wither, an evil plague that has been slowly taking over the nature of the world. As you make your way up the mountain, your task is to use your light to wither away the Wither, releasing its stranglehold on the world. And it's a simple story. Like it reminded me of a game that Thunderful published a few years ago called The Ooze, where in that game you played as this sort of explorer who landed on an alien planet, and there was this kind of black oozy goo that was taking over the planet, and you had to go up and collect the ooze to kind of free the planet. And like I said, it's a story that is, I guess, for video games as old as time, where you were going around, there is some sort of plague or curse or whatever eating up nature. Even in Final Fantasy 16, in one of the DLCs, this was more or less the plot of that DLC, with these crystals that were growing everywhere. And and you basically have to walk through the environment as this character and get rid of the curse, or the Wither as it's called. It's like the typical light versus dark story. It's an interesting story. What's even more interesting in this game though is that the game actually has no dialogue. So the story is told through the wonderful animations and the expressions the characters give in the game. And reading reviews before the game, this seemed like quite a big selling point of the game, that there is no dialogue, that it's all told through sort of animations or through, how did they call it, like environmental storytelling. However, after finishing the game, I kind of think that the lack of dialogue doesn't seem as impressive because of how simple the story is. The story, like I said, is pretty simple. It's light versus dark. You are this lighthouse, and you have to basically shine your light on dark things to get the dark things to go away. And then as you progress through the story, there are other various things that you have to do, more or less resulting in you shining your light on something to get rid of this monster that is taking over the world. And I think another big emphasis that the game wanted to put on you as the player from its story perspective is that they really want you to feel endeared by these two creatures, by Keeper and Twig. And I do think they could have maybe done a better job at actually making them feel endearing. Like, there is never really felt like a high stakes part in the game between the characters, because the game does this continuous thing of like making the lighthouse fall off a cliff, or I don't know, fall down a hole, or there's a lot of falling where you think, oh, okay, wow, they're split up and there's going to have to be some sort of journey back to one another, and it never really happens. Like, they do it a few times where a lot of time passes, and then somehow, but they aren't necessarily clear about how much time does pass, and still you then manage to find Twig again, and you just continue your journey like nothing happened. So yeah, there's a lot of points in the story where it really wants you to be like, oh my god, no, they're separated, or like, oh, poor lighthouse, poor Twig. But at the back of your mind, or not even the back of the mind, at the front of your mind, well, actually, I'm going to meet up with this character again in 2 minutes. So it never felt like I was that invested in the characters, really. Otherwise, though, the characters, like, they are very cute. They are very sort of, like I said, well animated. Like, you might wonder how you can make a lighthouse sort of like interesting to interact with, because all the lighthouse is its light kind of looks like its face, and then it has two pieces of metal that are its eyebrows. But it's quite amazing how well the animators actually managed to get emotions out of that, or reactions out of that. And then Twig as well. Twig is more like it's like a bird mixed with a dog mixed with a dinosaur. Like, she looks like a bird that has like T-Rex arms and T-Rex legs with a long tail. But she acts like a dog, so she'll sit on top of the lighthouse's like hat, like not hat, but like the top of the lighthouse, and curl up like a dog in a bed there. So again, like, yeah, it does feel very, very. They are very well animated and cute, but the beats in the story just really didn't get me to care about the characters that much. Another reason that I felt like a lack of endearment towards the characters is that for about half of the game, they don't really have anything interesting to do. So the first section of the game is very linear, with you walking the lighthouse from point A to point B while shining your light on objects that slightly hinder your way to make them disappear. There are, in quotation marks, puzzles here, but they do feel like they've been added more to give you something to do rather than to give you some challenge in the game. This part of the game feels like a walking sim in like the worst possible way. I know people use walking sim a lot as like, oh, all you do in this game is walk around and I don't know, like Gone Home, like you read sort of notes that give you the story. Like, to me, I don't think that kind of walking sim is a bad thing. I think that's like an interesting way to tell a story and an interesting way to design a game. But this game literally just feels like the whole point of the first section of the game is you are just walking from one side of the screen to the other. That's all you're doing, while shining your light on some things that, like I said, are there just to give you something to shine your light on, rather than there to be like, okay, how do you get through to the next scene? It's more like, no, you just walk over, shine your light, and keep walking, which is not a great feeling, like, when you open up this game, because it's like I said, it just makes it feel like a walking sim in the worst possible way. And it's also a bit annoying because at the very start of the game, it's very sort of lush and vibrant, but there's a lot of like architecture in the levels where it's kind of hard to be like, well, where am I actually supposed to walk? Because you'll be bumping around. Like, it reminds me back in the day when I first played Uncharted and I was trying to platinum it, and I would just run around the edge of the map, like bumping into things to see if it led me down to like a secret route or whatever. And that's kind of how this game feels at the very start, but you aren't intentionally doing that. It's just like, you're just like, oh, I think I have to go this way. Oh, no, okay, I've hit like a wall. Okay, what if I go left here? I've hit another wall. Okay, well, where am I supposed to go? And it's very, very hard and unclear to see it where you're going. And and if this sounds negative, for me, actually, it was negative. Like, the first 1 to 2 hours of this game, I would say are bad. Like, I did not enjoy them. I think this is the closest I've ever been to refunding a game on Steam, because I know you have that 2 hour limit there. and I was really considering it. I was like, this is €30. This is quite a significant amount of money for a game, and I was really like, I don't know, like I'm not enjoying it. But because it is Double Fine, and because I do like their games and I like their creativity, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick with it, and I am glad I did. I'm not gonna say like the final 75% of the game was great, but it definitely did get better. And for me, the enjoyment started to kick in around a place called the Clockwork Village, where there is this. It's kind of like it's like a wind-up kind of creature that you have to is missing parts. There's 3 parts that you miss, and you have to go off and do 3 little like sort of puzzles, and then you bring them all back and wind up the creature, and it starts working again. And that's because like I just thought this town was very endearing. It's made up of all of these like clockwork not animals, like kind of like people, where they have like one wheel that runs, and they have these faces that look like clock faces, and they're all kind of ticking around. It looks very, very pretty, and it's where I said like where I said it kind of gives a Miyazaki feeling, where you think, okay, these creatures feel very whimsical, they feel very fantastical, they're kind of cute to interact with. Some of the buildings as well, like I said, if you're watching the video, you can see on the gameplay, like they do look very Tim Burton-y, with these kind of like very high peaks on them. And it just felt a bit more of an interesting place, and the puzzles themselves became way more engaging too. Like they had this really interesting mechanic, like time shifting mechanic, where you had to basically go back in time, and there would be, so say you were in the present and there was like a door that was blocked. If you went back in time, the door wouldn't be blocked anymore. If you went forward in time, the door wouldn't be blocked anymore. And it was kind of interesting, because what happened is most of the puzzles you need Twig to interact with something. So you'll tell Twig, okay, go fly over there and crank this handle and turn it around. But if you went back in time, Twig turned into an egg, so you couldn't use her to actually do the puzzle. So you had to be like, okay, well, this first section is obviously I have to walk through this door because it's blocked. But then how do I get to go back to the present to get Twig back to do the next part of the puzzle? Which felt way better. It just felt like an actual puzzle game that was like interesting to play. Like you had to think a little bit. I won't say that the puzzles were that challenging, but like most of the time, it's still like Twig was just sitting on a lever and cranking it, or pulling one lever from one place and putting it into another, and all you really have to do to engage with it is rotate the left stick. But it did kind of engage that part of your brain that is like kind of logical thinking, or thinking in general, whereas before it was just really like, okay, how do I get to the next scene as quickly as possible because I'm not enjoying this. And the second half of the game, it definitely does feel like a game, with lots of new mechanics added that, to be honest, might not really all gel together, but they are definitely fun to play. Like, it feels like a little bit of a hodgepodge of like different mechanics that they tested and like, oh, this is fun, and like, oh, well, we can put this in here and put this in here, but it doesn't really, to me, really stick with the narrative of the game. And they feel so drastically different from one another, where that's it. It's like you don't feel like you're playing, by the end of the game, you don't feel like you're playing the game you were at the start, which in this case is a good thing, because the game at the start was very bad, but still it feels so different to what you were playing at the start that you kind of feel like I said, I feel like there is some kind of disconnect there. But yeah, as like footballing cliches go, I do think this game is a game of two halves. The first half was pretty bad, very frustrating and boring to play. And yes, it does look gorgeous, which we'll talk about a bit more, but it really didn't feel fun or engaging to interact with. And the second half, on the other hand, was these things too, but felt like a collection of random mechanics thrown together. And like I said, they were fun to play. Like, they definitely made the game more engaging, and it definitely made that last half of the game go much quicker than the first half did in my mind, because I was at least enjoying playing. But I don't really think I've experienced a game like this where the end feels so drastically different from the beginning. It's an interesting design choice, and it kind of asks the question, which we'll talk about a bit more about, like, even though a game looks gorgeous, if it doesn't have engaging gameplay, how good of a game is it? So it definitely is not the best game I've ever played. It might not have really hit the mark with me that way, but as a work of art, it is a gaming masterpiece. The visuals in this game are absolutely stunning, and the world is like nothing I've ever seen before. So if you've never seen the game, I'm playing a video right now on the video version of the podcast. But yeah, it's basically the art style of the game is like a surrealist painting. So everything, and it kind of feels like an oil painting. So you can see almost every single like brush stroke. Like, you know, if you imagine a tree and in a normal painting, you would paint the branches and then paint on some leaves. In this game, there isn't really leaves, like individual leaves. It's just like there's just a brush stroke of green paint, and that is your tree, basically, the leaves in your tree. So it's very visually kind of striking, like it's very pretty. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the things that Double Fine does best. They do make very unique feeling and looking games, and it definitely does that. Like it's one of those games where you feel like every frame you could pause and you could take a gorgeous screenshot of it. The lighting in it looks fantastic. Like it really it really kind of leans on its lighting to help it make look even better. Like the scene we're playing here is kind of as the sun comes up or goes down, but there are some very dark segments where it's very dark, but purposely so that you have this, because you have this light that helps you see your way. And like I said, like it has an interesting world. Like this world is basically derelict because of this wither, but there are these animals and creatures and civilizations that are kind of holding on, waiting for a savior, and you come along as that savior, as the keeper. Also, like it has this very cool theme around like water, so like crustaceans, I guess you would say, plus snails. So they have some really interesting looking animals where you have this giant creature, like almost like a whale-sized creature, but it's like a snail with loads and loads of eyes and like different kind of chimneys coming out of it. Like it looks very unique and something that you've not seen before, and it really works with that lighthouse theme of, you know, like the ocean and sort of hard kind of stone, like a hard shell, and these creatures match that too. And then comparing that then to having like this lush, like you can see on the screen if you're watching, orange trees and grass and blue kind of mountains, it does contrast really, really well, and it just feels very, very, again, Double Fine. So yeah, it's a very, very good looking game. Just loading up my notes. Sorry, there's a lot of clicking going on. Yeah, so that's what I kind of talked about. Already talked about. So like they have this nice interwoven feeling of the environments that are quite concrete. So in this world, you know, there is buildings that were obviously inhabited by humans at one point. And yeah, they kind of feel like these forgotten relics of the past, where the game doesn't ever really like have a nod towards that there were humans here at one point. It's very much like a game that is set in the long distance dystopia where the world has kind of ended. Like there's been some environmental disaster, humans are no longer there, and these are the creatures that have managed to survive. But I do like it as well from a narrative standpoint, because they never actually say any of that stuff. That is just my thesis for what I saw in the world, and someone who plays the game might have a different idea for why the world is how it is. So yeah, it's very cool. It's a very kind of dreamlike, the game too. Like the art itself is very abstract, and like I said, like these ideas of you know, it's a dystopian world, but it's inhabited by these sea creatures almost, and yeah, it's very, very Double Fine. And yeah, and I think it's something Double Fine knows is how good this game looks, and they really kind of force you to look at it. Which I like. The camera isn't, so it's not controlled via the player. It's all like a fixed camera that sort of changes position as you move around. So if you ever played like the old school Resident Evil games, it's like that, but actually it feels nice, whereas those games haven't really aged well with their camera. But yeah, so it means that the camera will, like as you're walking, it will pan down to make you like, so that you can see above yourself and see like there's this huge tree canopy with statues in it, or it will zoom out as you're walking along a cliff to show you like, oh, look at the scale of this cliff and how small you look on it. And yeah, like I said, like there are sections in the game where it really wants you to be like, oh, look at how gorgeous this looks, and really forces you. And I like that, because I think there are some games where they are very good looking games, but players don't necessarily notice it because they're playing the game, or they are doing, they're like playing and half looking on the phone. Whereas this game is very much like, no, we're taking control of the camera. We're making sure that if you're playing the game, you see what we want you to see. And I think that is great. And I think the artistic mastery is topped off by the music and sound design of the game. because at times the music sounded like alien and almost otherworldly. And apparently I heard this somewhere, but apparently Double Fine created some like custom instruments to get this sort of effect of this alien world, which I think is very, very cool. And yeah, I also really like the sound of the animals in the world. Like, it does make it feel very much alive as you explore it, especially these sort of mythical or sort of fantasy or fictional sea monsters that are, like I said, they're like a mix between like a crustacean and a whale, which obviously we don't really have any real sounds for in the world, but there are some really good sounds, and again, like, there is no dialogue, so it's just these sounds of, or these voices of these creatures that sort of portray how they feel or what they want you to do next. And I think that's done incredibly well, where yeah, it's you know, you feel like these characters are telling you something, telling you what to do, but again, their voices and the sound sound so alien, so it's kind of like a weird feeling or a weird experience. And one thing that I want to do is, because I played this game on PC, and usually I don't really play many games on PC. The reason I played it on PC was because I wanted to record some gameplay, which I've been showing throughout this review, and because yeah, I made a YouTube review of this game. You can go and watch that on my YouTube channel now. But yeah, so I recorded it. Oops, I showed the wrong thing. I recorded it on PC, and yeah, I have like a decent PC. Like, I'm not really going to go into the specs of what it is, but it's a decent gaming PC. It's probably a couple of years old now. I actually got it off my brother, so it's probably 3 or 4 years old. So it's not that old. And this game, I mean, graphically, it's a gorgeous game, but it's, you know, it's not like a massive open world game. And yeah, and playing it on my PC, it wasn't the best of experiences. Like, you can, if you're watching the video now, you can probably see it was a little bit framey at times. Mostly the problem I had with it was the resolution. Like, my PC, the standard settings was playing it on medium graphics, which was getting me like about 55 to 60 frames. And then playing it up on high would knock it down to like 40, which for me is fine. I'm not like a technical person. Like, I mean, I can tell the difference between 60 and 30 frames, but like, usually that's down to feel. Like, I remember playing, I think it was Enter the Gungeon on PS4, and then going and playing it on Switch, where I'm pretty sure it's locked at 30 frames on Switch, and I was like, whoa, this feels like a completely different experience. But for a game like this, where you're a slow moving lighthouse, I didn't mind the 40 frames, but the thing was, it was just making my laptop sound like an absolute jet engine, so I just couldn't really get into the experience, because I just had this like going off on the side of me. But I was like, well, you know, it's not such a big deal. Like, I was actually just planning to play the first 2 hours of this on my laptop, just to get some gameplay recordings, and then I was going to play it on my Steam Deck. The game, at the time I played it, I don't know if it's been updated since, it's not Steam Deck verified, so this is a little bit on me for maybe expecting too much. But yeah, the game, I mean, it ran, FPS wise, it ran okay on the Steam Deck, but the settings, the standard settings it put it on were very low. And again, like, sometimes I don't think it's such a big problem playing a game on the Steam Deck on very low settings, because it's such a small screen anyway, that you don't need the highest fidelity on that tiny screen. The problem with this game is that, like, because its art style is very abstract and very sort of like, what's the word? Like, not blurred, but sort of like, it's very wide brush strokes. And the problem is that then when you play those with an art style like that, where there is, the detail is quite, it's hard to explain. Like, it's imagine if you've ever seen like a Van Gogh painting, like, that's the kind of art style that this game has. And then imagine seeing that painting at like whatever, like, I don't know, 5 or 480p. That's like, imagine that's how blurry like the game looked. Like, the game just looked completely blurry, where, okay, you can see your lighthouse fine, you can see the light where it shines, you can see twig, but everything else just looked very sort of, you couldn't define what anything was. Like, you'd be like, okay, there's like a yellow blob there. What is that? Oh, okay, that's a tree. So for me, it was unplayable. Like, I probably could have played it longer if I really wanted to, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna go back to the PC, to the laptop, just to play it there, just so it at least looks decent and I can at least see where I'm going. So yeah, I think if you've got this game on your list and you are planning to play it on a Steam Deck, I would probably wait and see if they optimize it and get it actually verified on Steam Deck, because like I said, Not that it ran badly, it's just that the resolution was so low that because of the art style, everything looked blurry. And yeah, I kind of had to ask myself, I was like, okay, with this faff on with the graphics, I probably should have just bought it on Xbox. Like I said, the only reason I didn't buy it on Xbox was because I wanted to easily screen record it, which is obviously easier to do on a PC. But yeah, so I would say, like, if you don't have like a PC knowledge like me, like you just put the game on and you just hope it runs and just hope it works. Or you don't really have like a beefy PC apparently, then I would, definitely get this game on Xbox, because it's just, you just want to put it in, it'll work. If you have an Xbox Series X, it'll work in 4K, it'll look gorgeous, and you won't really have to worry about any of the technical issues. I just wanted to mention that there for this. So yeah, so that has been, so we talked about the story, we talked about the technical issues. The question, like I said, is what came up for me was, although this game looks gorgeous, does making a gorgeous game necessarily mean you've made a good game? And I think afterwards, I'm definitely on the side of, it doesn't matter how good the game looks, as long as, if the gameplay isn't fun, then it isn't a good game. Yeah, like, because I saw a lot of other sites, like I think IGN gave it like a 9 out of 10, which is like, it's the thing of like, this game is a piece of art, and I think if you kind of get it and you take it as like, this is something different for the industry, as like this is, no one would ever really expect, especially a Microsoft-owned studio, to make a game like this, then I can see why you would rate it very highly, as like, this is pushing things forward of like the art of video games. But as an actual video game, as someone who, like, if I'm going to suggest it to someone to be like, all right, should you buy this game over this game? The gameplay for me just isn't enough. Like, the start is, like I said, it's just so boring and bland, and just like, what am I doing? Like, this is not even gameplay really. And like I said, in the end, the last half of the game does get a lot better, but like, it's not really, it doesn't feel like the same game, which I already talked about. And there's also actually on YouTube, there's a documentary of the making of Keeper, and it talks, which goes through the director Lee Petty, basically explaining a lot of his decisions. And he is kind of like, yeah, this is a game where like, you have to get it, and if you don't get it, then you probably won't like it. And I think I get it, but I just don't think like that's like an excuse to be like, oh well, if I don't get it, then you won't like it. It's like, I get it, like I get what you're doing, like I get the story, I get the funny, the quirkiness, I get the artistic side of it, but I still just don't think it's a very good game. All in all, I think it's just it's just not a very good game. Like, end of sentence. So yeah, I think this is a bit of a weird place for me, because I really like Double Fine. Like, I'm really happy this game exists, because it is different. It is something only they could make, and I'm happy that even under Microsoft, they are able to do projects like this. It does also make me wonder though, what have they been doing the last 4 years? Because I can't imagine this game took them 4 years to make. Like, full time, like their entire studio working on this for 4 years. It's interesting that Lee Petty directed it. Like, he's always kind of the B team lead, I would say. So it makes me wonder what Tim Schafer's working on, if he's directing something or writing for something. But this seems like this is a Lee Petty project. Like in the past, he did the roguelike called Rad, and he did, what was the stacking game with the little like Russian dolls? He did that as well. I can't remember what that's called. So yeah, these are more sort of like the Double Fine's like second branch of games, whereas Tim Schafer tends to do like, he did eventually did the Psychonauts 2 and Psychonauts and Brutal Legend and whatever. So it makes me wonder what he's working on too. I'm very excited for that. But yeah, so I think I probably already answered this question, but should you buy Keeper? And yeah, Keeper currently sells at $29.99, and at that price, I cannot recommend the game. I am a Double Fine fan, and will always buy their games to support them and see where their creativity takes them, but still could not recommend the game at full price to someone who is not a fan. The first few sections of the game feel like the worst type of walking simulator, with dull and boring gameplay that is there to give you something to do rather than challenge and engage you. The remaining 75% of the game is better, but feels like a hodgepodge of mechanics thrown together that, though they are fun, don't really gel well with each other. The story is simple, but its plot of get rid of the plague overtaking the world didn't really add anything new, and it's a very well worn out video game trope, which we've seen in multiple games. I can, off the top of my head, I can name 2 that I've played in the last 5 years. I like the characters of Keeper and Twig. They had an interesting design and were animated beautifully, but I never felt the connection to them that the game wanted me to have, because I do not think either of them had that much interesting things to do in the game. Where Keeper shines is in its art and world design. The game is gorgeous, with many of its frames looking like a surrealist painting. The creatures inhabiting the world made it feel alive, and watching them exist was some of the highlights of my 5-hour playthrough of the game. However, I think at the end of the day, the question remains that if a game visually looks like a work of art but does not have that engaging gameplay, how good is the game? For me, I expected more from the gameplay, and therefore I think Keeper is an okay game. If you have Xbox Game Pass and want to experience something different, by all means check it out. However, if you don't, I don't think this is a game you need to worry about playing for your Game of the Year list. Therefore, I basically gave Keeper a 6 out of 10 if you haven't read the review. I'm sort of now as we're getting towards the end of the year, it's the end of November as I'm recording this, I'm like, okay, what games do I feel like I need to play that could be contenders on my top 10 games of the year? This was one of them because I didn't have time to play it when it launched. I think it was when Pokemon came out. And and that's why I bought it and played it, because like I said, I like Double Fine. I was looking forward to this game, and yeah, it just didn't deliver for me. I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, that is, I guess, part of art, that not everyone appreciates the same art. Even though I do appreciate the art in this game, I just don't appreciate the gameplay. So that's that. The other games I've been playing actually recently are Wonder Stars, which is a turn-based sort of like, it's not, I wouldn't call it a JRPG because I'm pretty sure the devs aren't Japanese, but it's like what's the word? Like, not an inspiration, but it's like a spiritual successor. But it's obviously very inspired by old school JRPGs and also Dragon Ball. I'm playing that, finished that actually, and then the next game I'm playing, I started last night, was it's Promise Mascot Agency. So those are the the 2 other games where I want to get these ticked off my list to then, before I make my Game of the Year's list. So we'll see if either of those ends up on the list. Keeper, I don't think it will be it won't be in my top 10 list. It won't even probably be in my shout out list. But yeah, it's a game, like, this is another question for, another thing with Game Pass is like it's on Game Pass, try it out. You're not paying for it necessarily, even though you are paying now, because you're paying significantly more if you got Game Pass Ultimate. Which is what I think you need to play this game now. So you're paying €30 a month for that. Anyway, it's kind of like the game. Yeah, you're like, all right, yeah, put it on Game Pass and you can try it out. And if you don't like it, whatever, you didn't pay for it. But I think for games like this, it's not a good thing. Like, it just becomes like shovelware. Like, there is this term going around like slop, and games like this are going to fall into the Game Pass slop of like, all right, it's on, just play it on Game Pass if you feel like you might be interested in it, which I don't think is a good place for games to be. Like, even if people do like it, being suggested by me that, all right, only try it if you're on Game Pass, is not a good place to be. I think, like, so it's a little bit of a shame. Like I said, I don't mean this in like a mean way, but like I said, I think Lee Petty's teams are usually the B team of Double Fine. So we'll see if Tim Schafer is working on like anything else, if they're doing Psychonauts 3 or whatever. But this game, it feels a little bit like, when Obsidian first got bought by Xbox, by Microsoft, and there was the guy, he was like, basically, I'm burning out, and if you don't let me do the next project I want to do, I'm going to quit. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, you can do it. And he made the Pentiment, and that came out and was like universally like adored. This kind of feels like Double Fine's version of that, where Lee Petty was also a bit in the documentary, was kind of like, yeah, he needed a break. He wanted to do something creative, something different. He didn't want to do more Psychonauts, and he didn't want to chase industry trends. So that's what he made here, and I feel like, yeah, okay, this didn't quite hit the landing like the Pentiment did, which, to be fair, is another game I played and didn't really get into, and was like, it's fine if you have Game Pass, play it. I should play the Pentiment though. I am like the core audience for that. I studied history. I live in a Germanic country. this period of history is very interesting. I just couldn't get, and I love that kind of art style, that monastic sort of illustrations that they have. Yeah, but I just couldn't get into that either. So that's how it is. But yeah, I would be very interested to know if you have played Keeper. Like, I feel like I haven't really heard much about it at all online. Like, I think it was Alex from the Mimicsville. He was playing it, or at least he talks about it on the podcast. But otherwise, yeah, I've not really seen much coverage of it, so I don't really know how it went down other than the reviews. And like I said, a lot of reviews were very positive. But I would be interested to know if you've played it, or if it is on your list to play, or, you know, are you a Double Fine fan? What are some of your favorite Double Fine games? As always, you can let me know if you're a Spotify listener by going down to the comments, or if you're a YouTube listener or Patreon. So yeah, all of those services all have comment boxes. You can all comment there and tell me what your favorite Double Fine games are, or if you have played Keeper. And as always, yeah, this has been episode 80 of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed. It's a bit of a negative one. I don't really do negative podcasts usually, because you know, I pick and choose the games I play, and I usually play games that I'm interested in. So most of the time I'm quite positive about the game, because I'm going into it thinking I'm going to like it. There's not many, I would say, in the 80 episodes we've done where I've been this kind of negative about a game. I hope I didn't come across negative. I hope it came out as balanced, my review. But yeah, that has been the episode. Like I said, go check out the Double Fine documentary on their YouTube channel for Keeper and for Psychonauts 2, because they are both fascinating. And yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't have any notes open. I'm trying to think of any episodes that I could link to this one. Like indie game episodes, there's loads of indie games on here. Go check out Hades 2. That would be great. The video or the podcast. Also, go check out the Keeper review on YouTube if you haven't done so already. I've been trying to make like specific YouTube content, and it's not been going well. Let's put it that way. Like, I've been putting way too much time into making these reviews, these videos anyway. I've been making shorts. The shorts have been doing all right. I'm going to keep making the shorts and just kind of clipping out the should I buy section, like the conclusion of the podcast, and editing it down and then just putting that out as a short. But yeah, the videos themselves, I don't think I'm going to make any more. Like, it's way too much effort. And like, I think the best one I've had got 40 views or something like that. And I'm like, okay, for the probably half a day's work it takes to make one, plus all of the hassle of getting gameplay footage, I'm probably not going to do those anymore. But it would be nice if you go over and watch the Keeper one, because that was one that I put a lot of effort into all of them. What did I do? Hades, Pokemon ZA, Keeper, and Dispatch. So I've done all of those games, and yeah, like I said, they didn't perform very well, so I'm not going to bother doing them. But if you're interested to see what those are like, do go over to YouTube, and if you haven't subscribed there already, please make sure you subscribe. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening, as always, and watching if you're watching. Also, if you've not noticed, on Spotify there is a video, so if you're on Spotify, you can unlock your phone and look at me. I'm here. I started uploading video to Spotify now. I don't know why, if it makes a difference, but Spotify is pushing it, so maybe they'll push my videos to more people. If you do it, you have to play for the algorithm. So yeah, there is a video there, and yeah, if you're on Spotify, make sure you leave a review, 5 stars. If you're anywhere else, 5-star review. If they do reviews, give me 5 stars, please. Thank you. Bye.